this video, we're going to add a text field and see how we can get the data within that text field and do something with it when the button is pressed. All right, here we go. So let's go back over to our layout, get rid of the log for the moment, and zoom in a little. In fact, we'll get rid of that bit over there because we don't need it. And we're going to click on text and bring in a plain text element. And I'll just pop it above the button there. And there we go. You can see it takes the default Android style. So first, I'll make it full width by changing the width to match constraint. And then I'll add in some small margins on the left and the right. And I'll just add a third margin linking it to the button so that it's well laid out. And we're going to need to be able to refer to this UI element in our code to know what its value is. So we're going to look at, for the first time, the ID attribute. And each element here has an ID. If we look at the button, that ID is just button. And the ID of the text field here is edit text, which is the name that we use for a text field in Android development. So just to customize that a little bit, we're taking the name of the person here. So I'm going to call this name edit text. If you haven't come across this capitalization before, this is known as camel case, where the first word is completely lowercase and then every word after that is capitalized. And it's just a nice way to keep it completely text-based, no spaces, but make it reasonably readable for human viewers. And just one other thing to show you about edit texts before we go and write some code is that we can add a hint, which is very useful. So if we want the user's name, for example, we might say your name, add that as a hint, and then if we get rid of the text name, then that will display there. And then let's run the app quickly and see how that behaves. We should find that your name appears faintly, and then when we tap in the field and start writing some text, it disappears completely. So you've probably seen that behavior either on apps or on websites. It's a very useful way to interact. So you can see it's clear we're asking for the name, but as soon as we start typing, the hint goes away. Brilliant. So we've created an edit text with an ID of name edit text, and we want to get its value when the button is pressed and display it in the logs. So a few new things to learn. The first is that we need to create an edit text variable to refer to our name edit text that we've just created. So this variable has a type of edit text. So it's edit text with a capital E, and I'll call it name edit text. We need to add the edit text class up the top there. And it's going to be equal to this particular view or the text field. And the way that we find that view is we use the method find view by ID. And then the ID we know is name edit text, but we don't just enter name edit text. We use R for resources dot ID for our set of resources, and then within that we use our particular ID, so name edit text. And then we end with a semicolon. We're not quite done though, because this find view by ID method will return a view, and we want an edit text, which is a particular type of view. So we have to convert the view that is returned by this method into an edit text. And we do that by adding edit text in brackets before the find view by ID method. So this will create a variable of type edit text with a name of name edit text, and it will find a view by its ID. The ID is in resources and in the set of IDs within our app, and name edit text is the actual ID, and then it will convert that into an edit text and set the name edit text variable equal to that. Make sense? Excellent. If you're not 100%, don't worry, it will become clearer as you practice it. Okay, so then we're going to add a second line to the logs, and this one is going to have a tag of values because it's going to be a value, and the actual thing we want to log is the value of the name edit text, so the text within it, and we get that using name edit text dot get text, and then we need an extra function to convert it to a string so that we can display it in the logs. So this finds the edit text, it gets the text within it, and then it converts it to a string, which is just a set of characters, and displays it in the logs. All right, here we go. Let's run it and see if it behaves as we want. Okay, so first off, if I just press the button when it's empty, you'll see we just get it worked because there's no value in the edit text. But if we write Rob and then press the button, you can see we get it worked and then Rob. Great. So that's how we get the value of a particular field. As before, I want you to try this out, and I want the creation of a new app to be second nature for you as well. So I'd like you to create a simple login screen. So it should ask using text fields for a username and a password, and then the button should say login. And then when you click the login button in the logs, we want to see the username and the password that the user has entered. All right, that's the challenge. Good luck. Go for it. All right, hope that went well. I'm going to close this project and start a new one. I'll call it login demo. And because we're old pros at this now, we can just click next, 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 and let Android Studio do its thing. So we want to get the username and password from the user, so we'll need 2 edit texts and then a single button underneath to allow the user to log in. So let's get rid of our text view there and bring in our plain text. Now we do have some other types of text fields, so we could use an email one if we like, but I'm going to stick with plain text as we're going for username rather than password. So let's set up our edit text. So we'll go from top to bottom. Username edit text is what we'll call it. And actually we need to jump to layout width, match constraint, and then I'll add the left. So we've got 16 there. That's quite a nice margin from the edge. So we'll have 16 on the other side as well. There we go. We'll get rid of the name text, and I'll just change the hint to username. There we go. I'm going to have a look at the input types. There isn't a username option, so I think I'll leave it as is. Just a plain text. But for the next one, we want a password. So let's use the password field. And if you did that yourself, then give yourself some bonus points. So this will have the effect of not showing the actual characters when the users type them, but just showing little blobs instead. So as before, we'll change the password width to match constraint, and then we'll add in some margins. So you can see the default ID for this one is edit text 2, but I'm going to change that to password edit text, and we'll have a hint which will just be password. Great. Let's not forget a top margin for these so the layout is clear, and then we'll bring in our button, which I'll center, adding 3 margins, and I'll change the text from button to log in, and I'll change the ID to login button. All right. Okay, so we're all done there apart from the onClick method. I'll come back and do that when I've defined it over here in mainActivity.java. Right, third time we've done this now, so it should be reasonably clear in your mind. We're creating a public method, doesn't return anything, so it's void. And I'll call it login this time, because that's what we want it to at least appear to the user that we're doing. The method receives a variable of a type view, which we'll call view, which will be the button that calls it. And then let's first off just do a simple log, and I'll show you why I do that in a minute. So info and then button pressed. And I think this is a good thing to do just to make sure that everything is connected up right. Before you write sort of any complicated code, just make sure that your button is linked up to your code like that. And that if there's a problem, it's not because your code doesn't work, because your code is so simple it can't possibly not work. So it's worth just doing a quick check at this point, and then we'll write the code to get the value of the username and the password. So here we go, all looks good. Let's just tap the login button and check the logs. There we go. That's looking good. Yep, so all is linked up right. We just need to get the values of the username and password fields. So again, hopefully you remember that we create a variable of type edit text, add the edit text class. Oh, let's call this username edit text. And we're going to get this using find view by ID, and the ID is resources.id.username edit text. And we want to convert that to an edit text from just a general view. Same with password edit text. I would get into the habit of literally, as you're typing these things, to be talking it through in the same way I am, to say what the actual lines of code are doing. So we're finding a view by its ID. The ID is resources.id.username edit text, and then we're converting that to an edit text. Excellent. And then we'll just add in 2 lines for the logs. So this is going to be the username. Oh, we want username edit text dot get text dot to string. There we go. The auto predict is so good you can almost get away without hardly typing anything. And then we'll have the password, which is password edit text dot get text dot to string. There we go. That should do it. We'll press it again. That little dot, by the way, means that it's going to run the app without completely reinstalling it, which is supposed to be a bit quicker. I haven't noticed it super quick, but there you go. That's not too bad. So again, if there's no value, we don't get anything logged. But if I put in Rob as my username and password as my password, and then press login, oh, there we go. The button was pressed. Aha! And can you see what mistake I made there? Hopefully you noticed it at the time. I thought I'll leave this mistake in. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we figure out they're there before we release our code to the world. That should have been password edit text, not username edit text. All right, let's try that again. Rob and password. Login. There we go. That's better. All right. Hopefully you managed to do that without making that awful mistake. But we're now able to make a more interactive app. But there's probably part of you thinking, but this isn't really interactive because the user can't see any of this log content that we've created down here. So we really need to display something for the user so that they know that they've logged in or that we've at least registered the button click.
Subscribe and press the bell icon to get notifications.